Hello, everybody. I am back to talk about the developmental iceberg and what this means in supporting kids' behaviors in summer camp, in groups, and always. So, looking at a Mona Delahook book, which we have at the clinic and is all about beyond behaviors. So, that's the title of the book, Beyond Behaviors, and it's all about looking at the child as a whole. So, when we look at how behaviors signal vulnerabilities or challenges that kids might have, that may be the developmental essence of where we need to work or where we need to interact with them. So there's a big expectation gap that we often see in schools or in families that kids need to do better or they need to do differently. And the philosophy behind all of this developmental iceberg work is that children do well if they can. So that's a Ross Greene quote and philosophy that we think kids can do things, but in reality, they can't yet, or may need our help or our support or our guidance to get through it. So Ross Greene really shifted this paradigm worldwide when it comes to thinking about kids and what they're capable of. So when we think about what may be under the developmental iceberg, meaning the tip of the iceberg is the behavior that we're seeing or the observable behaviors, and everything that's going on under that iceberg is what we want to think about as therapists and clinicians. So the top-down way of thinking about this would be to look at the child's behavior and try to correct that or try to extinguish it or try to adapt it or think it's the child's fault for being that way. So this is where we hear a lot of judgments of kids, such as that they're defiant or they're manipulative or they're attention seeking or acting out, when in fact under that iceberg we need to look at their physiological state or their neuroception and whether or not that's faulty or whether it's working or where the vulnerabilities or holes are. We're looking at their emotional responses. So we're looking at the emotions like shame, fear, sadness, guilt, anger that may be underlying that behavior. We are looking at their stress response. So the fight, flight, freeze response, this is where all that comes in. So we may be looking at, okay, if the child's running away, are they in fear? Are they having a flight response? And when it comes to leaving the house, maybe they're having a big fearful moment versus trying to be defiant and not follow the instructions of the adult. We're looking at their sensorimotor processing or preferences and how those may play into their day. So is this a sensory seeking behavior? Is it a sensory avoiding behavior? And how can we support that at a deeper level to help benefit the child and the family system and make everybody's life a little bit easier? So we also look at their physical pain or discomfort. A lot of our kids have difficulty communicating their internal body signals. So they have difficulty with interoception and feeling when they need to go to the bathroom or feeling when they're hungry and interpreting and making meaning of that in a way that they can adapt to in an adaptive way. So if we extinguish or avoid or punish kids for behavior, we may be missing valuable signals to all of this information about their neurobiological profile and what that means for this child in particular. So we look at it as, is the child's behavior really intentional? So yes, there's definitely some intentional behaviors where kids are figuring out the world and they're pushing limits and testing boundaries. And it's a way of making meaning of the world and knowing the boundaries and what their role is in the world or what they're capable of in the world. And we also look at it is behavior a stress response? So often we see behaviors that are adults are less fond of as stress response. So a child may be stressed or feeling unsafe in some way, and they need us to co-regulate or guide them through it. So relational safety is really the foundation of our house. It's the foundation of brain development, of social emotional development, and of mental health. So when we look at the way that we interact with kids, the social, emotional, and mental health, and the physiological state of the child and how we co-regulate that is really pivotal for understanding this iceberg and how to support these kids. So in the book by Mona Delahook, The Beyond Behaviors, she goes through different zones and how the child may signal to us that they need our support to co-regulate or guide or help them to make meaning of emotions or behaviors or wants or needs in the moment in a way that they can ultimately do that on their own. So all of this is with the idea that once kids have thousands of repetitions making meaning of these emotions or behaviors in the moment, that they can ultimately self-regulate on their own. But if we aren't getting to the root and supporting them through that developmental iceberg and the bottom of it versus looking just at the top of the iceberg and adapting to that, or judging or putting our projecting our opinions on that, then it's really tough to get anywhere when it comes to supporting kids in the moment. So that is an intro to the developmental iceberg and how we use it in our work. And this is a really big conversation that I'm constantly having with parents, and I imagine all OTs are. It's looking at what is going on at the root and being client-centered and looking at the child's individuality and what that means versus putting a blanket judgment on all behaviors and a blanket idea of how to support or improve, if you will, that behavior. So that is it for now, and we'll be diving a little bit more deeply into sensory and emotional signals, so check out that video from here.